Thank you. One human family living on one organism. Yet man is embroiled in a war against himself. Unfortunately, this blatant truth hasn't yet been realized by the vast majority of humans living on Earth. The war against ISIS, Russia, and now laughably Venezuela are dominating headlines in the latest front of the information war, but a far more deadly war is being waged against the organism that we all share. We face the most severe environmental crises in the history of this planet. Deforestation is at a rate of 36 football fields per minute. Floating trash islands the size of Texas across the Pacific, and half the world's species has been wiped out in the last 40 years because of habitat loss and pollution. In just the last 30 years, climate change has already caused a tripling of natural disasters, with scientists predicting an irreparable tipping point by year 2020. Ironically, that's the same year that Obama has pledged to cut carbon emissions by 17%. 17%, wow. Well, how can climate change solutions be taken seriously without a massive overhaul of the agricultural industry, without a complete termination of the military-industrial complex? The Pentagon is the biggest polluting institution in the world and is exempt from all international climate treaties. Good job, guys. The climate change disinformation campaign has gotten to a point of such absurdity that Texas's State Environmental Protection Department, has banned the use of the terms climate change and sustainability in all reports and emails. That's the point we're at now. It's an issue that should supersede politics, but a corporate-controlled press run by oil and gas won't dare undermine its sponsors. And the establishment showcases an alternate reality. Media hysteria abounds about missing planes and Iran's non-existent nukes. Yet there's an eerie calm about the issues that most severely impact us and what we can do to fix them. Of course, the population remains dumbed down, complacent, and willfully blind. Maybe the CEOs, lobbyists, and politicians are short-sighted because they're all building their own Elysium and they don't give a fuck if we all die. But the majority of them are inevitably just changing deck chairs on the Titanic, and they know it. Deep down, everyone knows the truth. Every last vestige of this precious planet is being pillaged without consequence. Endless consumption and unfettered capitalism will not and cannot last. And every single empire falls. That's just a matter of time. The system blatantly protects the bottom line, resists any substantial change with military force and police aggression to keep the old guard. The elites at the helm will never capitulate their security for the good of humanity. And I don't know about you, but once a system doesn't work for 99.999% of us, might be time for a new one. Before RT, I was doing anti-war organizing, but once I saw the media selling the Iraq war across party lines, I realized that there was something very systemically wrong and corrupted, and it crossed all barriers. And I realized that media was really the number one battle. Because if you don't have a platform to tell your message, no one will hear it. Around that same time, I started a little website called Media Roots. It started as just a hub for censored information. It grew into a multimedia citizen journalism project, which eventually brought me to Russia Today and then Breaking the Set. And it was a dream job to attack power on an international platform. But I decided I want to be meeting the people behind the stories and telling them myself, independent from any state or corporate entity. I don't just want to react to mainstream media's circle jerk of fuckery. These issues deserve in-depth analysis and substantive discussion, which is everything that we've seen here today. Hence the problem with the 24-hour news cycle, right? It incessantly reacts to what these corporate elite assholes create for us. That's their reality. And just to emphasize this point, Bush lackey, I don't know if any of you know who Karl Rove is, brazenly told the New York Times back in 2004, a reporter named Ron Susskind, he said this: "We're an empire now, and when we act, we create our own reality. And while you're studying that too, judiciously as you will, we'll act again, creating other new realities, which you can study too, and that's just how things will sort out. We're history's actors, and you, all of you, will just be left to study what we do. Unfortunately, he's right. Reality is dictated by an out-of-touch, warmongering elite that doesn't apply to the reality that 99.9% of us live every day. And it's only able to sustain on fear and war. And there's nothing the establishment fears more than a populace not living in fear. I'm not sitting up here saying I have all the answers, and I don't think anyone out here claims to. But a technological, resource-based economy is the most thought-provoking and groundbreaking solution I've seen to the crisis of civilization that we face. And there's an extensive roadmap on how to get there. We don't have to wait for anyone but ourselves to start implementing the ideals either, because we are all agents of change, we are all vessels of truth, and we can push our communities towards seismic, sustainable shifts in the way we live right now. Other countries already have a different approach. I recently had the chance to visit Cuba, and not only does the country have a complete organics renaissance, but there aren't commercials telling you what a worthless piece of shit you are. And also, there's no corporate chains that have eviscerated local culture. But most spectacularly is Cuba's medical internationalism. It sent the world's largest contingent of doctors. 66 different countries have healthcare professionals operating it right now. It has a medical school that trains people for free to become doctors. Of course, this wasn't out of altruism. The long-imposed economic blockade on Cuba has forced it to become self-sufficient and fiercely community-oriented. Clearly, the country is far from perfect, and I'm not saying that communism, obviously, I know that that's not the way to go. We've seen it fail time and again. But the obvious takeaway remains the tremendous amount of good that can be done with such little resources. I mean, if this is what an economically crippled nation can do, what can the richest country in the world do with the resources that we have if people came first? Of course, every government that's tried to incorporate different economic models gets systematically crushed. USAID is out there around the world subverting every sort of alternative with covert spending for regime change. In Cuba, still, despite the normalization process, they're spending $20 million a year on the ground. 56 years after the Cold War, and America can't let a small socialist nation live in peace. It's fucking unbelievable. In Venezuela, Obama just announced it's an extraordinary security threat to America. He has, quote, deep concerns about its human rights abuses. Yet America's staunchest ally, Saudi Arabia, summarily executes people by sword, public floggings of bloggers in public squares. It's quite astounding. Of course, these issues are deep-rooted and they're deeply interconnected. This is about hegemony, and the clutches of global capitalism will not give up easily. The system can't afford alternatives, and we've seen how far it will go with no remorse. It's a machine that runs on death and destruction, having institutionalized structural violence that kills millions of our brothers and sisters every day around the world, and we can't sit idly by and be passive actors watching this happen. No one has to go without water in Detroit or freeze to death in bombed out Gaza, because we have the resources to provide everyone. Would you let your mother or brother starve to death in the streets? No, because we belong to the commons and the commons belongs to us. The revolution of values is an extension of empathy and understanding, compassion, humility, globally. It means the shattering of the illusion of me as separate from you, as us as separate from the dirt under our concrete jungle. It comes with expanding consciousness, media literacy, critical thinking, and sharing this information. And most importantly, it's about being the change, building the alternatives ourselves. That's why I believe that this movement is unstoppable, and the ideas it spawned will create the reality, our reality, of a sustainable future. Because if we don't do something drastic, we'll just become casualties in the war being waged against us and every living thing on this planet, on this pale blue dot. Carl Sagan said, in our obscurity and all of this vastness, there is no hint that help will come from elsewhere to save us from ourselves. Thanks.